Hi, and welcome to the 12th House Podcast. I'm Michelle, your host and the head witch in charge here at Holisticism. And today on this episode, we have Amanda Chase, and we're talking about a spicy convo all about the problematic aspects of manifestation. Yikes! Hold on to your butt. This is a wild ride. Amanda is the founder of Ocean Creative, which is a creative consultancy and agency. And over the last 3 years, she's really helped develop some of the biggest brands in the wellness space that you have definitely double-clicked on Instagram. And while I will definitely have Amanda on to talk about being a creative and making content and being a creative director and producer, at some point, definitely she'll come back. Today's episode was spurred by an Instagram rant that I saw her do. I was, totally like blabbing on my couch, scrolling through IG, and I came across Amanda, who's a really good friend of mine, just coming clean about the problematic aspects of manifestation. And I was like, bro, we got to talk about this on the podcast. And she wrote me back and was like, yes, I'm so game. I am getting so many messages from people. She tells a story in this episode. And she knew that she'd struck a chord and that there was a lot more to excavate with this conversation. And, I just want to preface this by saying Amanda and I don't come to any real conclusions in this episode. We wanted to just have a conversation and open up a dialogue around some of the really problematic things that we've seen and the really harmful aspects of manifestation and law of attraction. And like I said, we don't have any answers. And I'm sure we'll actually we're still figuring out and wrapping our brains around some of these concepts and ideas. But I think at the core, what Amanda talked about on her stories and what we talk about in this episode is putting words to feelings that a lot of people have felt, which is there's something that's just not quite right here, that feels a little off, that's a little hinky, that's a little fishy, and it doesn't feel good. And I'm not sure why. And it's a weird feeling when so many people are so into something and just ravenous about it and so excited by it. And you feel like there's something off because you feel like there's something wrong with you. And you're like, well, this isn't bothering anyone else, then I must be the problem. And so I think why so many people responded to Amanda was because they were realizing that they weren't alone and that they weren't the problem. And that's really liberating. So we just wanted to open this conversation up to more people and maybe help you feel less alone. The intention is not to villainize law of attraction or manifestation. Not necessarily. It's also not to pour out cups of haterade because that's not what we do here. It's just to open up a discourse and to have a conversation between two friends. So it gets a little off the cuff about what we've experienced and what we see. And I just want to say, I think that there are some really helpful aspects of what gets taught in law of attraction and manifestation circles. I think that positive thinking can be really helpful unless it turns into toxic positivity. I think that journaling and meditating and inner child work and shadow work and excavating the self and understanding your unconscious mind and especially things like unconscious bias is so useful. And I love spiritual shit. Look at me. Come on. I'm clearly into this stuff. I am the target audience. And where manifestation feels weird and gets into uncomfortable territory for me and territory that really makes me shy away from it and even using the word manifestation is when it posits that if you're not getting what you want, then you're not doing the work. You're not doing the work enough. Or that your success or someone's success is linked to their spiritual evolution or to their self-actualization. So for the first example of if you're not getting what you want, you're not doing the work, you can't okay, sure. Maybe that works in some situations and maybe that's true in some situations, but it's not true in all situations. You can't say that to a single mom who lives below the poverty line. You can't say that if, you're not positive thinking enough. And that's why you can't afford to feed your kids tonight. Because that victim blames and shames someone who's a victim of structural oppression and basically says, well, if you pulled yourself up by the bootstraps, this wouldn't be your problem. You must not want it hard enough. And so your being poor, your experience of marginalization is your fault. And I just don't believe that. I refuse to believe that is the empathetic, compassionate, evolved way to look at the world. And I understand the difference between enabling and empowering. I understand what it is to empower people to have some self-awareness or to like want to move forward in the world. I get what empowerment is, but to me, that language is really gaslighting and victim blaming. And even if you don't explicitly say that, implicitly, often that's what law of attraction teaches, or what some teachers of law of attraction teach. And so really the answer is not that like you need to positive think your way out of this, or you need to like do more, you need to like be more expanded in order to get your thing. It's that we need to have a system in society that actually supports the community and people. And with community care, we can help elevate each other, because this isn't just an individual game. We're all connected. We're all in this together. And yes, definitely take care of yourself and do self-work, because that is really important. And don't forget about your community while you're doing all this self-work. At the end of the day, we have to look out for each other. Another thing that manifestation says sometimes, and has sort of been misconstrued with, is that if you're wealthy, if you have quote unquote success, or if you accumulate more things, or if you have more material objects like the Mercedes and the Gucci loafers and the house in Malibu and whatever, that means that you're evolved. It's like you're a vibrational match. And when you raise your vibration, all of a sudden you're a vibrational match for these things, and these things can't help but come to you. And first off, like, since when has the vibration of a Mercedes-Benz been like high? I don't understand that. Just like, I don't understand that, but that maybe I'm dense. But also, you know, you can be wealthy, you can have wealth and still not be an evolved person. And just because you are evolved doesn't mean that you are going to have wealth. Like, they don't have anything to do with each other. And to equate them to each other, to say like, oh, once you self-actualize, then money will flow to you easily, is just like, that's not the whole story. And that's not true. And to also say that you'll have happiness, you know, when you self-actualize, you'll have all these material things and that will make you happy. Almost equating the material things to your happiness is also false. And it sets people up for despair. And that like thriving and striving in order to pull ourselves higher up, right? And the reality is like, no material thing is going to make you happy. Yes, material things can make you more comfortable. They can make aspects of your life easier. For example, having healthcare makes your life a lot easier, for sure. Or like having money to have like a private doctor come to your house. Yeah, that'll definitely make your life a lot easier, especially during COVID. That alone isn't what makes you happy. And it gets so complex and convoluted. And I know not all teachers are teaching manifestation and law of attraction this way, but so many are. And so many are through the implicit nature of the way that they teach and the way that they project themselves in the world. And I think that that's the crux of this conversation. And again, this isn't like, you know, hexing people who practice manifestation. Far from it. But I do hope that it opens up maybe some pathways to conversation, maybe some elements that you haven't thought of if this is something that you've taught or practiced in the past. So with that, I'm going to let the episode run, and I'm really keen to hear what you think of it and yeah, your thoughts. And I think that's it. Okay, here's the episode. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to be recording with you. We just sat and talked for like 2 hours. Everyone, this is Amanda Chase.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. I have been a huge fan of the podcast since Michelle launched it, and it's just so fun to be on here today.
Stop it, you're making me blush. Amanda and I are really good friends, and we've been really good friends for now it's kind of a long time.
I think so, like 3 or 4 years.
I think actually
Maybe
probably
5 now?
closer to like 4.5. Yeah, 4.5, 5.
Yeah.
Which is wild. And we met through weird circumstances because someone I went to high school with told me that I should meet you.
Mm-hmm.
And then we ran into each other at some weird wellness event.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been friends since.
Yep. And I became a subscriber.
Oh, yes, a Holisticism subscriber in the OG days when I was taking everyone out to coffee and being like, do you want to be on my email list?
Yep. And it was like your 4th like matcha date that you had that day. And we met in West Hollywood at Moon Juice.
Oh, TBT.
And just chatted it up. And then we launched a surf club.
Yeah, we did. Our ill-fated surf club. The Bad Surfers Club. I still have the handle on Instagram, and I think I could make something out of it. But
yeah,
we've done a lot.
We've done a lot,
and I'm really happy that you're on the podcast. I'm just like, I love you, so I'm so happy to just be chatting with my homie. Amanda's a manifester, and I'm a projector, and I feel like that is a necessary component to just highlight as to why we have such friend chemistry.
Yes, it is very powerful. She gets to see all the systems, and I get to like help push it off into like, you know, a whole nother direction, like a force behind it.
Amanda, you're definitely like my barometer for whether something's going to be good or not. If you get excited about something, I'm like, oh, okay, this is a good idea.
Yes, good. See, we have that chemistry. Projector, manifestor. Everybody needs one.
Yeah, and we've taught classes together. We've done a lot.
We have.
We've like fallen in love with the wellness space, fallen out of love with the wellness space. But you're like very much more, you have an amazing resume. I mean, from the outside, your resume is amazing. You've had some pretty incredible experiences working for wellness brands.
I have. Yeah. From a pretty young age, I had a lot of big goals for my life. And those were, you know, going to specific schools, getting certain internships, working for certain companies. And I just would keep going until I reached, you know, the brand I wanted to work with or reach the goal that I wanted to achieve. So I've worked very, very hard for the past 15 years to, you know, be able to have the type of experience to get those types of jobs with those people. So it's a lot of hard work. And like, I'm so grateful that I had a dream at a very, very young age and that I had a lot of energy and willpower to like go after it. And that's, you know, one thing we can talk about.
Big manifestor energy.
Yeah. Big manifestor energy. And so, yeah, I worked for some of the top wellness brands that we all know about today.
And that's why Amanda's on the podcast today, because first and foremost, I love a good Instagram rant. I went on an Instagram rant last night and I saw your Instagram rant like 2 days ago and I was like, Amanda, you need to come on the podcast and talk about this.
Yes.
So recap for the folks at home who maybe missed the IG. And where can they follow you on Instagram?
So funny enough, both Michelle and I have updated our Instagram handle, like almost
like
on
the same week. Yeah. Like I did it on Monday, I think. I
did mine, I think yesterday, but because I was on an IG live and I asked a question to someone and they pronounced my previous Instagram handle, which was me, Amanda C, as Amanda. And I was like, oh no, this is not good. Like no one could understand that there was the word Amanda in there, and that's like me, Amanda C, which, so
that was like, it was like, you know, there was a moment for quippy IG handles. It was like when we were getting off AIM, like we were like the millennials were like, oh yeah. Like my IG used to be like M. Pelazon says, like I was typing, right? But yeah, now it's like, just what's your name? What's your name? What's your real name?
We just need names. And unfortunately, a lot of the names are already taken. There's like, I was like scrolling, I'm like, Amanda Chase. There's like a million Amanda Chases. And I was like, I don't want one with numbers. Right. So my new Instagram handle is Amanda L. Chase.
What does the L stand for?
So classic. Amanda Lee.
Lee. Oh, that's cute. I love Lee or May as a middle name.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I think those are really cute middle names.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So on Amanda L. Chase.
Yes.
On IG. You popped off.
I do. Yes. When I get an inkling of something that kind of like makes me feel a certain way, like I get very passionate about it, or I feel like I'm like ready to talk about something, I just go on my Instagram now.
I love it because you have been very quiet on Instagram, like
Yes.
in the past, historically, I would say.
Oh, absolutely.
You are very proper. You are very appropriate. Like you are the opposite of me.
Yes.
You're like, people will be watching this and I will get jobs based off of how I share this or not. And I'm like, how many curse words can I put into this unprofessional Instagram story? And
I mean, I like wanted that, honestly. I was like, I can't keep up with this anymore. And you know what? It actually first started when I worked for a fashion company in New York City, and Instagram was kind of new. It was maybe like 2014. And I was sick that morning, and I posted on Instagram, like at the time you just posted anything,
right,
like your post. And so I posted a picture of a green juice
with like a Valencia filter on it.
With absolutely, or like the New York filter, 'cause like New York, right? And my boss messaged me and said, "You must not be that sick if you can post on Instagram." And it was at that moment, I was super green. I was young. I was in my early 20s. That I had felt that my Instagram presence or my social media presence was being watched by my employers or my bosses.
Oh, yeah.
So it was at that moment that I stopped.
Oh, wow. Instead of blocking them, you just were like, I'm going to be good and not use this as, I'm going to use this in a specific way.
Yes.
Got it.
So it was from that moment on that I became very self-aware of that my bosses were watching me. And then after working for that company, I started to work for a fashion blogger and, you know, running her social accounts. And so social media, for me, in my experience, working up in the creative advertising department, was a way to promote your brand. It was a way to show up and be professional.
Curated.
Very curated.
Yep. Yeah. Even like I feel like fashion bloggers or individuals, I know you worked for someone who like her name was her brand.
Yes.
So like, even if she's sharing like quote unquote authentically or vulnerably, it's still like messy. It's still beautiful, right? It's still like aesthetically pleasing or like an appropriate amount of vulnerability.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when you get to that level, you're now being paid by brands and companies to create content for them too. So it's also part of their business. It's the way they make money.
Right.
And so I had to take a very serious approach to social media content, and all of those experiences mixed together helped shape my own ability to kind of show up on my own account. And honestly, that type of I'm watching you kind of feeling on my social media happened even when I was a freelancer or a consultant. And so if I posted something, I would be afraid that they'd be like, well, why aren't you like working on my project? Why are you working on your own thing?
I've been there before too.
You have?
Totally. Where you're like, well, every hour that I live, I can bill technically. This is what capitalism basically like teaches us, right? That we're only as valuable as how productive we are. And so if you're alive and breathing air, you should be working. If you have the capacity to, unless you're almost dying or like you're falling asleep at your computer, and then you can take a break. At least that's what I picked up. And so sharing on Instagram, well, if I have the time to share on Instagram or like work on my own projects, then I must have executed those other projects to the nth degree, like as best I possibly could.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way that I set my business up when I first started freelancing and consulting was retainer.
Oh God, the worst.
So anyone who's out there and is a consultant, I have so many thoughts on retainer.
Oh, big hug if you have retainer clients and you haven't put boundaries in place of how many hours you're going to be working.
Yes. And with that, there was this assumption that, just as you were saying, that you just keep working, you just keep going. And another key moment also was when I tore my ACL in January of 2019. So I'd lined up 6 months of, I think at the time, 6 or 7, maybe 8 retainer clients. That's how long of the contracts we were setting. And when I injured myself in January, knowing that I had to get surgery in February, I had many clients questioning my ability to perform, to be able to show up and work for them, and threatening to pull out. and not work with me anymore.
Publish their names.
I can't. I mean, I should, but I can't.
Drag them publicly.
I know. I was like, Michelle, let's burn it down. And I'm like, well.
That is gross.
That happens.
That is so gross. And this is like, I totally pulled you off topic of what your rant was, but like, this is the problem of wellness capitalism.
Yeah.
And when wealth masquerades as wellness is when we get this structure where it's all about productivity and the company bottom line and not individuals and humanity and people healing, which is if you're in the well-being and wellness space, that's the fucking point, dude. It's like to support people's humanity, including the people that work with you, especially the people that work with you.
Yeah. And at this time I was terrified because I had never had a serious injury before. I was very afraid of stopping working. So what actually ended up happening was that I definitely didn't share anything about my injury.
Right.
Because if I shared anything
you went
about
like
that injury,
full on radio silent for like a while. Like
a long
we
time.
barely were even connecting, which I'm, by the way, totally cool with.
I was going through probably one of the hardest times in my life because I was kind of trying to keep my shit together while everything was falling apart.
Right.
And it was a lot for me to handle. And so when it came to my injury and then posting about or sharing about it, I definitely didn't because I already had clients that were potentially threatening me to leave. And I didn't want to go on and talk about how much pain I'm in or what I was actually going through. And it just, that stunted me to be really fully myself for so long. And it actually made my healing progression take on a lot longer because I was not letting myself heal. Like I got out of surgery after the medication started to die down. I was already on my email at 7:00 at night, day of surgery. Baby. And then 10 days later, I hosted a in-person retreat.
Dude, I remember. Yeah. I remember. It's like, you can't walk. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. I still hosted it. But that was my mindset back then. Like, I was not going to stop. I was not going to allow this injury to take down my life or take down my business. Because at the time, I was so driven to be the creative agency that was going to help all wellness brands. And we were on track to that. But the universe had other plans.
Yeah. Thank God.
Thank God.
So, okay. That was a great segue. Let's go back to the rant, the IG rant. So actually that was Chef's Kiss. Amazing background. So you were popping off. What caused it? What happened? What'd you say? I know that you had like 60 plus people DMing you being like, preach. So what was the message?
Well, I don't really have a lot of followers. So
you have a lot of followers.
I have like 2,000.
That's a lot.
Fine. It's totally fine.
For a person?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of people. I think that's a lot of people.
Well, usually, like, when I post, so 60 people, I had known that that we were onto something.
Yeah.
And that this was really some conversations that the community needed to have. So basically, I stopped having one-on-one clients back in November. So I already started to feel like this wiggle room of being like, ooh, I can kind of like show up here with like, without anybody like caring.
Right.
Nobody's going to get mad at me.
Right. I mean, like, and if they do, fuck them. Right? Yeah. They're not paying you.
Exactly.
Like, they can be mad at you on the internet. That's fine.
Yeah, block me. I don't care.
Right? I dare you. Block me.
Yeah. So I started to feel the wiggle room, right? And like feeling into it around November, December, and then January, I really like stepped into it. And so basically on Thursday, the 22nd or 21st or something of January, I shared an Instagram story that I was moving, and no big deal, right? But the apartment that I had moved into was such a symbol of all these goals that I had been once needing to create a sense of belonging, a sense of safety, a sense of success. And the story was really about how I have reached this point in my life through these past 2 years of things crumbling where I don't need all these external things, to make me feel worthy, to make me feel safe or that I belonged or that I'm lovable. And that's when you messaged me because so much of what previous clients that I've supported talk about is this concept that your self-worth is equivalent to the things that you have in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that that was the truth. So I thought that a nice car or nice things or a beautiful apartment was a sign of how worthy I was, how worthy myself was.
Right. Standing in your worth.
Standing in my worth. Manifesting the thing.
Oh.
Right? 'Cause I'm so worthy.
Right. Of course, because you're at the right vibration. You're at the right frequency. Right, Amanda?
Yeah.
You're owning your worth. And you've done your inner child work to know that you deserve those Gucci loafers.
On a daily basis.
You're reprogramming your brain for wealth and abundance.
Right.
Because that's the only thing. You know that you've done the work when you're calling in wealth and abundance.
Exactly. Oh, if only that.
That was sarcasm. That was heavy sarcasm.
Yes.
Okay, so I was like, yes! I'm like not a manifestation fan. And this has been my gripe for a while. I try to be quiet about it relatively quiet about it, because I feel like some of the teachings around quote unquote manifestation and law of attraction, some of them are useful, right? Of like gratitude, doing your own inner work on things like shadow work and knowing yourself and knowing what matters to you. But this like misconstruing of I'm a more evolved, elevated, self-individuated person because I have a beautiful house. Like that's proof that you've done the work is so ass backwards to me. And like, it feels so wrong and it feels so predatory because it's preying on people who have been marginalized by capitalism and systems of oppression and saying like, well, if you only do this self-work enough, then those things won't be a problem for you anymore, when in fact that's not true.
Yeah. It's very harmful. It's very harmful. I mean, I got caught up in it. I'll be the first to admit that I thought that all that needed to happen. And what I realized when I was doing that work, I'd love to share my practices because they're just so much more grounded and they don't really have any of that type of energy towards it. But when I was doing that, I would experience extremely high highs and then extremely low lows. And so it always felt like I was on this like wild roller coaster and I just couldn't live my life like that anymore. And then so I stopped doing all of those things and I just was able to really find my own flow. And I've actually, the whole reason why I'm so passionate about it now is because like I reached all my goals. I got those things. And for me personally, that did not make me feel like I was more worthy.
Right.
If anything, I was just kind of living in this false sense of security box that I just had a lot of bills to pay on it. And I was like, wait, what am I doing all this for? And it wasn't for what I felt to be, happiness and inner acceptance and this self-love without having anything external tell us that you need to do X, Y, and Z or have X, Y, and Z to feel that. That's why I feel like it's so harmful.
Yeah. And because entire brands have been made upon this idea, right? But like Instagram, the internet, where we're showing aspirational lifestyles and wellness influencers and teachers and practitioners, that's integral to their branding, right? Oh, you have to have the wide brimmed hat and the white walls and the fancy crystals and the most beautiful, expensive, but like, down to earth outfits. You have to have this look and feel in order to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Or in some way it like exerts your dominance in the space because you're able to have it all. And people get caught up in that aspiration, right? Of like, of course that life looks beautiful. It looks so peaceful. It looks amazing. Wow. Yes. But that's not the same as like knowing yourself and deepening your own spiritual practices. It's not necessarily disconnected, but they're not one and the same. They're not interchangeable. Like meditating for 20 minutes twice a day isn't going to get you a house in Topanga Canyon. It's just not.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. And I mean, I was behind the scenes and helping all of certain brands' visions come to life. Like I helped them figure out what pieces from a content perspective. Of course, there's business coaches and other things. From a content perspective, I would come in and help them understand from my experience of that's what my background is in content creation, how to amplify their vision and their goals. And
give yourself a little more credit. I mean, like, I feel like the brands that you've blown up, like at least 4 huge brands that are now huge, at least.
Yeah.
And took them from like rinky dink, they're taking their own photos and making their website on Squarespace themselves, to like full on media companies and brands that are raking in lots and lots of dollars, often because of their message now, not because of what you've done, capitalizing on people's correlation to self-worth and wealth. And you were able to see with your brilliant manifestor brain, like, actually, like, here's the strategy behind the content. Cause you weren't just like making content, Amanda. You were like, here's what we need to do in order for more people to see and understand where this comes from. I mean, like, I can say this as your friend. You got taken advantage of from a bunch of those people.
Yeah, I definitely was behind the scenes, and then, not very public about how it all came together. People would refer me, which is why for so many years I never had to market myself.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the way that, people would thank me, I guess, was through referrals.
But like sometimes referrals to shitty people.
It's unbelievable. Like, that's why I'm starting to create my own stuff, because I've been able to actually work behind the scenes with so many holistic wellness practitioners and able to see and experience the real side. And I'm getting hot.
Yeah.
I'm getting hot. There have been some pretty bad experiences.
Yeah. Like the incongruencies with the public persona, with the imagery, with even the language that, like, I know that you've experienced behind the scenes, that I've experienced as, someone also in the industry, not working directly under these people, but either being in the same room or whatever, having conversations with them. It is so gross.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I would have to stop working with a client midway. I'd have to break my contract. Like, either something that the way that they would treat me, the way that they would talk to me. I understand that I'm coming in and I'm making them a little bit uncomfortable, right? Like, they've hired me because they are maybe not happy with where they are, or they want to be showing up in a different way. And so I understand that I'm coming in a very sensitive capacity. Right. I also, like, as a manifest, I can feel when something is off, or when I feel like someone's not authentic or something, and I can't hide that also. Yeah. So at the same time, if they're not authentic, it's kind of going to be mirrored back, and it's not going to be a good experience. Like, honestly, like, I didn't even think that this was going to happen when I was consulting for people, but that's why I'm just starting to do my own thing now, because I've seen behind the scenes of so many inauthentic people that I refuse to stand behind them anymore because it's just too incongruent for me. I've got into this to help spread real healing to the masses. That's like been my tagline for Ocean forever. Like, we create scalable content so that you can help heal others and help spread your message. Yep. When I started to see that it wasn't authentic, or the person behind, I just had to stop, because it didn't feel right. I was now stepping over my values to work, and I refused to do that. So.
Yeah. And I feel like people got away with that. Like, people.
And they still are now.
And they still are. Oh yeah. I feel like everyone was like, oh, that person's so sweet. I'm like, no, they're not.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But that's a story for another day. Like, I do think though that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Like, people are waking up to what is real, because so many of these wellness and well-being brands that are not authentic, that are in it for just accruing more wealth. And like, let me be really clear, because we talk about money a shit ton on this podcast. You need money in order to exist in the world, because we live in capitalism. And so you need money in order to get your needs met. And you also deserve to have your needs met. You deserve to have a house that you love living in. You deserve to have food and shelter and healthcare and all the things. You deserve all of that, and to not have to worry about where your next paycheck is going to come from. And that's different than exploiting people's weaknesses and fears, especially around money, and putting a veneer of wellness on top of it.
Yeah. With the ultimate goal to reach your own big.
Exactly. Because you want to buy that $2 million house, or whatever it might be. That's so gross.
Yeah. And that's when I started to get kind of weary about my offerings and things like that, because I was like, they're not using this tool with the same authenticity that I am intending to create it for. Like it started to become like this monster of like, ooh, she can help you create like a 7-figure business.
Right.
And then,
Right.
but that formula it can't work for everyone, because you have to energetically, like you have to be like, if you're inauthentic, that's obviously not going to work. Like something's going to crumble down the line, whether it's today or in a few years. The truth always comes out.
Yep. So
it may last for a minute or a few years, but it's not sustainable if it's not founded in the right integrity. So yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. I can't create scalable content anymore for inauthentic people or brands or having the wrong intention for, you know, what their purpose is. Like if you're not actually out there wanting to help people, you shouldn't be doing what you're doing.
No. And it's so tough because I don't want to be a dick and I don't want to call these people and brands out, but I also feel so bad for everyone who falls into it, right? And falls for it. And I feel like that's what you said. Most of the DMs were people were like, oh my God, the same thing happened to me. I was following this person and I thought I would feel good when I had all the special flower essences and the blah, blah, blahs and the crystals. But now I'm like,
oh yeah,
even feeling more empty than before.
Oh yeah. I mean, I almost feel like I need to go back and screenshot all of them
Yeah.
to reread them and really have every message sink in, because I'm not just saying like yay or like little heart. Like these were paragraphs, if not multiple different messages that were coming into my direct messages of saying like, this resonated with me. I'm going through this right now. And it was all around this idea that these external things, they don't provide that self-worth.
They never did.
They never did. And that's the really problem with any healing modality that's out there, is like, that's what it's telling you, it's on the wrong path. And I think, you know, going back to what you were saying, like what you are creating and the little people, like my little community that I have,
You've big community,
conscious
Amanda.
people doing it the right way, from people who are willing to go to those places that are uncomfortable to open up new pathways for being. That's where the change is going to happen. So everything that you're doing and other people in their own industries, if it's founded in integrity, which I think a lot more people are becoming aware of what that feels and looks like, that's how we start to create a massive change for inclusivity and to make more people feel seen, heard, valued, you know? And so that old way is just on its way out, as with a lot of systems. It's going to be a while, right? To like see the turnover happen, but I do see it happening, and it will, you just can't fake all that. It will fail in the long run if it's not founded on integrity.
It's true. Carolyn Miss, one of my teachers, says you can try to wear the mask or you can try to hold an archetype of who you are not, but eventually you will become too exhausted. It's too tiring to not be who you actually are. So it all comes out eventually.
It does.
I mean, I cross my fingers and pray that that's the truth, because I'm bitter, because I'm a projector. So I have some bitterness.
Yeah, it's all right. It's all right. I completely understand. And that's why, you know, starting this month, I started to show up differently, and I started the mask that I had been wearing for so long got so exhausting. It was just so exhausting to just always be behind the scenes, helping everybody else, being quiet, not saying too much, not really, I'm not making any noise over here.
Right.
And as a manifester, that's completely opposite of what I'm here to do. And I've never felt more comfortable than I have in this year. And I'm doing everything that makes me uncomfortable. Like I made a list of things I'm afraid to do, and I consciously am doing them.
Makes you feel alive.
Makes me feel alive. And that's like really what I desire everybody to feel like. Like everybody should have that sense of aliveness in their life.
I feel like it's all uncomfortable. Living is uncomfortable, you know, whether it's like, sometimes I'm like, why the fuck am I in a human body? Like, I'm so grateful. But like also, it's so uncomfortable. Like being yourself is uncomfortable. Not being yourself is uncomfortable. But like when you're not yourself, when you hide who you are, that's a different kind of discomfort.
Yeah.
That's like, there's no excitement in it. It's only fear. And when you're doing things like what you're doing that scare you, when you can add some breath in, like that's when you feel alive. And that's the difference between the two. One feels like dying and the other feels like living.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would say in those moments, like when I was not able to express myself fully, or when I had to like just kind of be behind the scenes so often, for me personally, I did feel like a piece of me was dying. I felt like I couldn't express myself authentically, which is why, like, when you asked, like, I went silent for a long time because I was just like, maybe this is just how I'm supposed to be all the time, kind of depressed and like low energy.
No.
But that's not my real self. My real self is like actually quite expressive and quite comfortable in my own skin. And I'm desire to talk more about my past and share that side of myself, because so much of what people don't see is the darker, deeper side of my childhood, which made me who I am today, of this like more softer, gentle, more kinder person, because I never wanted to inflict pain on others because I just experienced so much as a child. So that's what I love to share more light on, is what's, and again, it's like the definition of a story, right? But what happened because of what happened. Does that make sense? So it's like the deeper layers. It's the deeper stuff that I'm really interested in, because that, to me, feels like the substance of who you are and what you're here to do. And so much of my approach is being able to understand that deep layer and then externally express that through content or whatever. And so I'm just now being able to like do that for myself for the first time ever.
Right. Well, because you feel safe to do so. And like, you've always created a safe space for others to do that, right? Like, that's what you're incredible at. And you're such a good teacher and guide to someone who's trying to understand what their purpose is and diving deep to find that purpose and then excavate it through the content or what the product or the art that they make and that they put out into the world, right? To make the internal external. You're so good at leading other people through that and creating a safe container for them to do so, because you've held so much pain yourself and you're able to look at every single person with empathy. I would guess like maybe even to a fault, if we think about the clients that you've worked with, of like, you see the good in everyone. I'm the opposite.
I do. I feel so seen right now. This is why manifestors and projectors, like, everyone get yourself a projector, basically.
Get yourself a projector best friend and a manifestor best friend.
It's so true, though. I think, you know, one of the quotes that just like keeps coming in my head every day is, we can't hold space for others if we're not able to hold space for ourselves, right? So that depth that I'm able to hold for you is because I've been able to like hold that for myself with, and then be able to look at all of my past shadows, whatever you want to call it, and be like, I still love myself. So going back to our story, it's like, if you have anything externally, that's not going to give you that sense of like self-love.
Yeah. You're like, you're doing it in reverse. Yeah. It comes from and like, this is so trite, right? It's so obvious it comes from inside, but like, it's been misconstrued so much with like spiritual evolution and wealth. And those two things are not intrinsically tied. It's not like the transitive property.
No, you don't need anything externally to bring this sense of self-love to yourself. And that's what I intend on creating content to help people dive into more. And that was very hard for me to articulate, like after all of these years. I love you, Michelle, because like every time I'm like, oh, I have a new mission statement, I'm going to send it to Michelle. I'm going to like,
and I'm like, yes, I love it. Yes.
I've sent you so many iterations because it's so hard for me to feel like that's a worth, like that could be a business model. But as a manifestor and being able to see all these things that didn't work for everyone else, to be able to stand in my own truth and say, if I know anything, I can help in any capacity, right? I can show up and do the work, but it's never going to feel as aligned as what my true purpose and calling is. And so this awareness that I've had with being able to show up for myself and what I'm actually here to do, that's the kind of stuff that I want to empower other people with the tools to tap into, to discover, to start expressing. And so that's like where I'm at with all of this. So content creation is like so far from the purpose of it. And I think, through all these amazing tools that we have, like human design readings and all this kind of stuff, you're able to learn more about you. And my gift is the way that I create. And that's formed through my personal, like, human design chart, but also the experiences I had as a child led me to create. It was my therapy. So here I am thinking I need to teach people how to create content, but that's so far from the truth. It's how to express what's on the inside that I'm most concerned about. I want that internal self to feel so seen, heard, and valued that it's being expressed on the outside. And I think the definition of depression, right, is repression.
Ooh.
So when we repress, we are depressed. And I spent so much of my life depressed. So like
same.
I know all about
My
it.
My serotonin is sluggish at best.
Yeah. Seriously. I need like the clean diet right in front of us, right? So I was repressing so much of my truth and my life and my voice and my spirit. That's what I'm most passionate about, helping people, express is if I can hold space for my dark messiness, I love saying this, I can hold space for yours. Right. And then to look at it with such love and forgiveness. And it's a really simple way to live, but it's the way that I'm most happy in this life and with my experiences, and everything else just goes to the wayside when you are able to experience life with that type of perspective. I know it's going to sound cheesy and cliche, but coming from someone who never really, like at the age of 18, I experienced contentment for the first time in my life, like a sense of contentment. I was in a yoga class. I took a college course on yoga, actually. And before that moment, I remember never feeling happy or content. And I was like, I think I want to feel more of that. So that's why I got into wellness, actually.
Yeah.
It was for my own health, my own mental health. Yeah, so I went in with the best of intentions, experienced a lot of shit along the way, got caught up in it, and got tossed out, and realized that none of that actually matters, and the deeper stuff is what I'm more passionate about. Substance.
Make something of substance.
Exactly.
That's Ocean's tagline, which I love.
Thank you.
Amanda, you're so smart. You're so pretty. You're so deep. I love you.
I'm real deep over here.
Super deep. Do you have Scorpio in your chart?
I think I do.
I feel like you do.
Like maybe Venus?
I don't know. Okay. Nice. You're a little fireball like that. Thank you for sharing with us. I feel like we could talk for ages about this. Maybe we'll do like another podcast episode about all the things. Cause I feel like another element is like, you have incredible style. Like you're so fash, you just like have, my personal style is like Amish grandma. Yours is like chic motherfucker. And so I feel like that's like something interesting to even double click on of like, if you like aesthetics and design and beauty and art and like making art, and we've equated luxury with and expense with style. How do we like deconstruct those things from each other? Like, and I don't really know the answer, but I feel like it's another hour-long conversation that we should have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so much of, well, when I first got into the magazine industry, it was a fashion magazine. That's right. All my, unpaid internships and early first jobs were in the fashion industry. And I mean, I worked at a very high-end fashion label headquarters, and I was making $35,000 a year as an executive assistant for 3 vice presidents in the creative advertising department.
That should be illegal. That's not enough to live in New York.
No, it's not. And they would require us to wear
you had to buy the clothes.
Yeah, I had to buy the clothing. And although it was a wholesale, I never made enough money to save. I always felt very embarrassed by my clothes. Like I tried to shop at, and, I'm very conscious of what I buy now and try to buy, eco-friendly clothing. But back then when I wasn't making a lot of money, I had to shop at like Zara and all those fast fashion places because I had to show up and be in front of the owner of this fashion label,
right.
which I have a really funny story about that because he complimented me on a Zara skirt and I like will forever I thought I was going to take that to grave, but like it's out now. I won't tell you the name, but that was always very interesting to me. So I didn't have enough money to buy those nice things,
right.
but I was expected to look a certain way. And
right.
so it's so much.
It's the same as in the wellness space, right? You have to
so
like,
much.
If you look a certain way, then we'll take you more seriously.
Right.
If you, usually like, let's just call it, if you're like a white person, where you're going to get taken more seriously because the wellness space is super racist. It's also like super cis sexist and
yes, it is fucking awful.
Yeah, there are aspects that are awful and there are people doing amazing work to make it better. And you're one of those people.
Need to make it better.
Like all of our North Noders are just like fucking Amanda's in the North Node.
Yeah.
They're doing that. There are people out there that are doing it. So if you're feeling alone or you're feeling like alienated by this space, I know that both you and I can speak for us.
Yeah.
I hope wanted to leave this wellness and well-being world and just be like, fuck it, double middle fingers, see you later, losers, we're out. But there's like work to do here and we're here and like we can do that work and we can make it better. We have the capacity to do so.
Yes, we do. One day at a time.
One day at a time. Amanda, where can people find you?
Well, please join me on Instagram stories at Amanda L. Chase. And if you're interested in learning more about working, finding some of your inner authenticity and expressing that on the outside, you can come over to oceancreative.com. And that's really where you can find me. Next year, I'll be launching a conscious daycare center.
Just in time for me to pop out a little coconut.
Well, that was the vision. So I will be launching that in 2022 to help children receive tools to become their most authentic self between the ages of 0 and 7. So
dope. You're such a G. Amanda, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I can't wait to be back.
Okay, so that's our episode. I hope this got some wheels turning in your brain, and if you disagree with what we said, that's okay. If it really resonates with you, I hope it does. I hope you feel seen, and maybe like we were able to put words to things maybe perhaps that you felt but haven't been able to put your finger on. I'd love to continue this somewhat complex conversation with people who are much smarter than I am, like Amanda and beyond. So if you've got a good suggestion of maybe someone who would be a great person to talk to about this, like hit me up on Instagram. And if you liked this episode, please share it with your friends. Sharing is caring. And it really helps us get seen and heard by more people. We are a all-women team at Holisticism. We are self-funded, women-founded company, and it means so much when you share this with your friends. It costs us money to make this podcast every week, which we happily do because we know, and we got so many requests for these types of conversations and these types of learnings and to make them as accessible as we possibly could. So it's worth it. And it means the world to us when you share this with your communities and your people and you leave us feedback. So if you love this episode, go ahead and smash that subscribe button, hit the 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, write a little review. It means so much, and stay cool out there. I can't wait to hear what you think of this hot take. So I'll see you on the internet. Okay. Bye.